Browns, Bengals on Sunday. We're finally here. It's amazing. We watch all the Guardians and Cavs games. So I think it's actually for the first time in a long time, Tony, I feel like the Browns, it's like we always get excited. But it's almost like, okay, I think we're good. So the Bengals come to town. There's many matchups we talked about on BelieveInTheLand.com. One of them, which is the obvious, is quarterback with Burrow and Watson. From my perspective, I'll lead off. I think obviously what's interesting is the two quarterbacks, how talented they are. But what I find very different is the expectations. Joe's the face of the Bengals. Will be there, win or lose. It's Joe Cool's team. Deshaun Watson, we know he's there, but I don't know if we have the same hunky-dory feeling before this game. I think I feel better than I did before the Washington Commanders preseason game. But, Tony, I'll ask you, it's strange. We still have a lot of anticipation of unknown with Deshaun Watson going into week one.
Yeah, we've been waiting for him to get back and show us what he's really been able to do. In this first full year after a full offseason, I think he's going to show that. But it is weird because it's $500 million now between the two quarterbacks. And very, Deshaun's still he's got to prove himself a little bit. I mean, we all believe he's going to return there. It sounds like everybody with the Browns believe he's going to return and, if not, get better. But it is just interesting going into it where he kind of has a little bit to prove. The good news for us is that Deshaun doesn't have to be the leader of the offense. Like, he doesn't have to dominate the offense to win games. We have Nick Chubb. So as long as Deshaun is just good and better than average, at least to start, that'll be good enough to win games.
I agree. I think this is one of the more anticipated Browns season openers in a while. I think last year was more nerve-wracking because it was the Baker Bowl. I think this year is not as much agita, but there's a nervousness about the unknown. It's very strange, but I think at the same time it's more confidence. Nick Chubb helps that out a lot. To me, Tony, we talked about there's two different matchups that we talked about outside the coaches when secondary wide receivers. I'll lead off with the other one, the offensive line, defensive line. This is the first time I can remember the defensive line for the Browns really excites me. I think there's a real chance they can make a real impact on this game. There's a real sense of force on this line, meaning it's not just Myles Garrett. You have to say Zadarius Smith along with that name, which is great. I think those two guys are going to be mashers. I actually think Tomlinson's going to make a big difference in the middle. I'm very excited about this matchup. I think it's a big matchup for the Browns because I think it has a chance to turn this game upside down if they do what they're supposed to do and put pressure on Burrow.
Yeah, it's really nice. I mean, we've seen what Miles, he's got, I think, 11 sacks in 9 career games against the Bengals. Burrow's usually running for his life when he plays us, and that's a great thing.
Yep.
And this is the best defensive line we've had by far. Miles has some help. They got Orlando Brown, who's going to be probably on Garrett most of the game, and he's solid, so that's going to slow us down a little bit. But we also have now Zadarius Smith and Shelby Harris and Dalvin Tomlinson, Okoronkwo. So I think we're going to see a lot of those three defensive end sets. Maybe Zadarius Smith plays a lot of snaps inside.
Yep.
I really think priority number one of week one and probably for the whole season is going to be getting after the quarterback. And I think week one, we've got as good of a chance to do that as all year. And
I agree. What are your thoughts with the secondary versus the talented, sometimes under radar, which is strange, is Jamar Chase and all the rest are just very, very good wide receivers to the Bengals. Denzel Ward and Thornhill are both iffy going into week one. What are your thoughts about the matchup of the Browns secondary and the Bengals wide receiver core?
So preseason showed that Schwartz is going to run a lot of man defense this
Yep.
year, and I think that should be a good thing. We've got the personnel to do it. I think people underestimate Greg Newsome. He's really a guy he's a starting caliber corner. So we have three guys who can really play man well.
Yep.
If Ward's healthy, I think we're going to really be able to neutralize Chase, Higgins, Boyd. But really, as long as the biggest thing they need to worry about is just limiting the big plays. When you're playing man defense, you're going to get beat. Like that's just how it is. But
Right.
Jamar Chase, he's got that home run hitting ability. I think the pass rush edge we're going to have on them, along with if Ward plays, I think coverage will be able to do enough. And but Ward playing is a big key. Otherwise, that might change up the game plan a little bit.
I think Thornhill too. And the reason why I mention it is it doesn't give us much rotation. You're going to see McLeod and obviously Delpa play a lot. With Thornhill, you get more of a little bit of a rotation at safety, which I do think comes in playing games like this because you're right. A lot of one-on-one. There will be no more communication breakdowns. It's not going to be as confusing as it once was. I think this is a year we're going to see Marvin Emerson rise. I really, really like that young kid. I think he might be might be better than Denzel Ward. Says a lot. Denzel Ward's very good. But I think he's that kind of ball hawk. I think this is a big time game for the secondary, but what's nice is they're not on their own island. The defensive line will help. And with that combo, it really makes – I don't feel as scared as I usually am about defense. I'm not as worried. Like, there's going to be things that happen, but that's sports. But in this game, I'm not as worried as I once was. I'm kind of getting the same conclusion you are. This is the one team Stefanski does well. He's 5-6, and Taylor's been there one more season, and he's only 2-6 against the Browns. And frankly, the two losses in 19 and last year, very bad quarterback play. The Browns had decent quarterback play. It might be 0-8. For some reason, they do well against the Kitty Cats. Look, you're much more of a Stefanski guy than I am, but from a guy who's more concerned, this is actually one team he does very well against.
Yeah, I think that part of it just goes to the Bengals' inability to stop Nick Chubb. I mean, that has been when we can establish Nick Chubb against anybody, that especially with subpar quarterback play that we've had the last couple of years, and the Bengals, despite all their efforts, have not been able to. And we've even seen Baker had some of his better career games against the Bengals.
Does.
Because they had to pay so much attention to Nick Chubb. That's where my kind of lack of concern with Deshaun comes in, because if we can continue to lean on Chubb like we have in the past, Deshaun can perform better than we saw Baker and Jacoby Brissett, and he's going to take that to a next level. And I feel really good about the offense and the defense going tomorrow.
Feed Chubb. I agree with Tony Camino. Feed 24 as much as possible. Are there any other matchups or things you're looking at in this game, Tony, that I may not have touched upon here?
Just not really a specific one, but just the O-line. They need to play well. The last thing we need is for Deshaun to be running for his life again, and for Nick Chubb not being able to run. The O-line's dominant, and it's been a staple of our team. So as long as they perform like that, I feel like we're going to have a good chance.
If you talk to the hand-wringing fans, they're worried about the tackles. Conklin has shown he's been in concussion protocol in and out this offseason. And Jedrick Wills has a momentum of not positive on social media right now. I think sometimes it's warranted. I think sometimes it's unwarranted. I actually think he's average. I think just sometimes people expect this big thing, which is understandable. He's a top first-end pick and for left tackle, so I get it. I think the offensive line, to your point, is always key. I guess my one other thing I'll mention, I think for a long time there's always been questions about the linebacking core in this team, and it's understandable. I will say, the more I thought about it, the more I watched, I thought JOK had a really nice summer.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be surprised if he has a good year, if he stays healthy. I think JOK is the one guy I'd watch. He really looked good in that last preseason game. He really stood out to me when I was watching it again. So that'd be one other guy I kind of watch out for. We will do a lot before the game on Sunday. Check out Tony and I. Tony writes all sorts of articles throughout the fall. So will I. We'll do combo articles like we did for this matchup where we break down quarterback, D-line versus O-line for the Bengals, the talented secondary for the Browns against the Bengals, and then the wide receiver, the coaches going up against each other. Tony there, I'm Andy Billman here. Have a good one. See y'all Sunday, 9 a.m.